All right, Jimmy Ott and Paul Stone talking some bowl games again for you this college football season. And the bowls have, it's an evolution of college football with the expansion of the playoff and the opt outs of the transfer portal and the coaching changes. There's a lot of moving pieces, and motivation is always a big key to the handicap, always been a big key to the handicap when you're talking about these bowl games. And that's included here. Trying to provide you information, angles, and analysis, but more than ever, a lot of information here for who's playing and who's not for these bowl games. Let's go to Yankee Stadium, the Pinstripe Bowl, maybe dubbed the disappointment bowl for these two teams. Both were preseason top five, and boy, they just stumbled early. Clemson had a little bit different path than Penn State. Clemson had to play LSU right out the gates. Penn State had a almost a preseason of sorts in a glorified exhibition games against their non-conference, and when they played Oregon, they lost in overtime. The disappointment bowl, in some senses. So, how do these teams handle disappointment? Well, Penn State made a coaching change in the middle of the season. Clemson, Dabo Sweeney is still there, and although he has been reluctant to evolve with the transfer portal, and some people have used that as a source of criticism, but no doubt he's been the best coach that has ever coached the Clemson Tigers. Dabo Sweeney, right now the Tigers are 3.5 and 48.5. We know Penn State has been dealing with an interim coach for quite some time now, but Dabo Sweeney has won Gator Bowls. He's won Cheez-It Bowls. And I just think he's done a good job when this is not the first season where his team was knocked out of their biggest goal. Their biggest goal was taken away, and he still keeps them still keeps them going. Even last year when they went to the playoff, they thought they were done. Nobody thought that Syracuse was going to upset Miami and open the door for Clemson to advance into the ACC championship game, winning it, and then going and playing Texas down in Austin in the college football playoff. I see a little bit of a history here of handling and keeping his roster, his locker room together at Clemson, as opposed to who knows with Penn State here. There's a lot of moving parts. They signed two players in the signing period on the first Wednesday of December. So, I think things are being held together a lot more in South Carolina than they are in Happy Valley. I'm going to lay the 3.5 here with Dabo and the Clemson Tigers, Paul.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Jimmy. I mean, these two teams obviously fell well short of their expectations during the 2025 regular season. You look back at the AP preseason poll, Penn State ranked number 2 in the AP poll to begin the year. Clemson just 2 spots back at number 4. Both fell off the map, however, relatively quickly. Clemson, they suffered that, a stunning 34-21 loss to Syracuse. They were a 17-point favorite back on September 20th. And after losing to Syracuse, Clemson 1-3 and essentially already out of the playoff race before the end of the month of September. And then meanwhile, Penn State, I mean, who would have thought before the year that Penn State's going to have a 6-game losing streak? That included a winless October, obviously ultimately sent home longtime head coach James Franklin, sent him packing, eliminated Penn State from the possibility of making the playoff, and also almost eliminated them from even qualifying for a bowl. They had to win some games late to get to 6-6. Predictably, this is a game that's going to feature a large number of missing players from both schools due to opt-outs and declarations for the NFL draft and that sort of thing. For me, it's kind of a total head scratcher, but I will agree with you totally. The fact that Clemson does have its quarterback, Cade Klubnik, he will play. Penn State doesn't have its quarterback to start the year. Drew Aller hurt around mid-season, lost for the year. And as you also mentioned, Clemson also has its head coach. They have that stability. Dabo Sweeney, Franklin obviously fired at midseason, and Penn State's coaching staff in transition. Matt Campbell will be the new coach for Penn State, coming over from Iowa State, but certainly won't coach the bowl game. So this is an interesting game. This is kind of what bowl season is in college football in year 2025. We'll see who shows up with more hands on deck and who wants it more, I guess.
And to Penn State's defense too, and we thought that they were going to get a jump on all of the other programs. They were going to make a coaching change as well, but the so many programs that fired their coaches later than Penn State had replacements already in place when Penn State was still looking. But Matt Campbell, you could have done a lot worse than bringing in Matt Campbell. And it's the thing about him, we've been looking at him to jump from Iowa State years and years. He's turned down so many jobs. So like I said, Campbell, a really solid hire by Penn State. We'll see how that works out for him there. All right, Bet Rivers players who place a same game parlay of at least $10 on NFL or NCAA football games will receive an entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning Squares can earn up to a $50 bonus bet per entry. See the Bet Rivers app or website for full details. We go from Yankee Stadium to the Red Sox, where they play in Fenway, the Fenway Bowl. It's a MLB Northeast rivalry thing here. And boy, we talk about trying to find motivation and a few things on two different levels. There's no doubt that you just have to look at the results from the military schools in the bowl games and kind of say, yeah, there ain't many opt outs in Army, Navy, Air Force. Just doesn't happen. And you look at their bowl record, both straight up and against the spread, it's gotten better and better and better as this trend has continued. The other thing that has continued is the early action on these bowl games, the support by the betting markets. We've probably seen better lines that are available right now than Army minus 9.5 and 44 over UConn. But the not just in the bowl games, but look at the military schools since it's become the roster movement has become so much more prevalent. Continuity within your roster helps. It's developing, it's building. There's familiarity within staff and also roster. And I don't think it's by accident that Army, Navy, and Air Force collectively have improved their results on the football field as well. But certainly here, where you're just wondering who is excited to play and who isn't. Army, Navy, Air Force, you don't have to worry about it. So that's a given. The better line is past us, Paul, at this point. But again, the cadets are always a strong consideration. And UConn made a change. You want to talk about a guy who, I mean, minor miracle job in Storrs, Connecticut for Jim Mora Jr. And keep in mind, they hired him very early in the process, and he was able to get that roster together, get him into a surprise bowl game. They really couldn't compete with Marshall that year, but they've gotten better and better. Lost a heartbreaker earlier in the year before Syracuse's quarterback went down, Angeli, in that one. But a lot of moving parts with UConn, a lot of roster turnover as well. You don't have to worry about that with Army here, Paul.
Yeah, that is so very true. This game, you're talking about the best of the numbers kind of gotten past us. This game actually opened at some books, I think Army -3. So there has been some movement here, but that was before all the changeover that's occurred at UConn. Their coach, Jim Mora Jr., off to Fort Collins to take the Colorado State job. And UConn also, as a result of that, primarily, they're going to be missing a good deal of their very top players in the program due to a combination of opt-outs, injuries, and portal entries, and so forth. The most notable Husky expected to forego the Fenway Bowl is quarterback Joe Fagano. Fagano this year threw for 3,448 yards, 69% completion rate, 8.3 yards per attempt, and just an absolutely eye-turning, amazing touchdown to interception ratio. 28 touchdowns, only a single interception all year. So they're going to have a drop off at quarterback. Expected to get the start as backup Nick Evers. Evers only appeared in 3 games this season. So you'll see a considerable drop off, needless to say, from Fagano to Evers at the quarterback position for UConn. You look at this Army team, they're off a disappointing 17-16 loss to arch rival Navy. That was a game that the cadets led much of the contest. The cadets, though, like most service academies, they represent a difficult bowl preparation situation for the opponent. Very difficult to prepare for a service academy. Obviously, they run the football a lot and they run it in a unique fashion. But UConn, they didn't do good defending just basic run offenses this year. Gave up 191 yards rushing per game. That ranked them 113th in rushing defense out of 136 FBS teams. Now they have to face the unique technique challenges and other challenges, all the eye candy, all the motion, all the movement that Army's going to present. So it's very difficult for me to envision UConn's defense having great success defending Army's unique option offense. You look at Army's offense, and Kel Helms has been the guy, their quarterback. He has been a workhorse for the Cadets down the stretch. In the last 8 games, he has carried the ball at least 21 times in each of those games. He's rushed for 100 yards or more in 5 of Army's last 7 games. He has 1,178 yards rushing this year, 16 rushing touchdowns, a little over 4 yards per carry. It's not optimal to lay more than a touchdown with Army. They have not thrived in this role historically, but when you consider UConn's coach has left for another job, they're without their quarterback who was highly productive. They're without a bunch of other players as well. I think Army's going to win this game by double digits. I like Army minus 9.5 over UConn at Fenway Park.
Log into your Bet Rivers account each Saturday to receive 2 profit boosts for same game and standard parlays. With the profit boost dependent on the number of legs included, see the Bet Rivers app or website for more details. One of the interesting things in this year in college football was, especially with the college coaching carousel being on hyper speed, and that was a lot of the coaches at schools that a lot of other programs were interested in were at their alma maters. We're coaching the teams, the schools where they graduated, and we got a matchup right here, the Pop Tarts Bowl. I know Paul gets excited about that edible Pop Tart mascot at this bowl game. Who does it? But anyway, 2 hot coaches that were mentioned for a lot of jobs, and Brent Key coaching his alma mater at Georgia Tech, and Alani Sataki coaching his alma mater at BYU. Both got extensions and raises at their places. Sataki very late, getting ready for the Big 12 championship game. Penn State had an offer on the table to him. But and then Jeff Brom at Louisville, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Now, one coach has no motivation to leave his alma mater, and that's in Athens, Georgia. But anyway, there's a kind of an interesting dichotomy here. We talked about maybe a disappointment bowl for some of them. These were very successful seasons in Atlanta, in Provo, Utah here. So Georgia Tech and BYU. BYU is 5-56. Something about Key when he talked and he gave that soundbite, and I know you remember it, Paul, when he said, "You cut me open. I'm a yellow jacket." This and that. There's a lot of coaches who fib pretty pretty extravagantly when they asked about these type of in these situations. I kind of believed him. I thought he was telling me the truth at that time, and I can't forget rather when he took over an interim basis and went on the road and won outright as 3 touchdown favorites, twice underdog twice against North Carolina and Pitt. So they're better and better. You talk about Haynes King, some key players playing in this game, and a very experienced quarterback against really a promising freshman in Bachmeier, the young player for BYU. But give me the 5 points, a little bit more experience here on the table. I think this is a little bit level of expectation, and the level of participation is just enough here. So I'm taking the dog here in the Yellow Jackets plus the 5 against BYU in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yeah, I think one could certainly fairly question BYU's motivation here, since the Cougars' goal obviously was to make the college football playoff. 2 non-competitive losses to Texas Tech, though, kind of took care of that and landed BYU here in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. They're facing a Georgia Tech team that's a quality football team, but I do agree that it's fair to wonder about the condition of BYU's collective team psyche. You talked about Brent Key and the fact that he is a guy who bleeds those yellow jacket colors, an old offensive lineman. And those offensive linemen, it seems like when they become head coaches, that their teams kind of just embody that physical, tough mentality, physical football. You mentioned Haynes King, the quarterback. He's a lot like Brent Key. He kind of carries that spirit onto the field. He takes contact. He's a physical guy. Is Haynes King. You look at Brent Key since taking over as interim coach of Georgia Tech back in September of 2022. He has thrived as the betting underdog. There have been few better than him over that term. They are 17-6 against the spread as an underdog since Key took over. And they have actually won in those 23 games that they've been cast as the underdog since Key took over as first interim coach in September 2022. They've won 12 of those 23 games straight up. So they have really been good as the betting underdog. Both teams going to have most hands on deck, it looks like, for this bowl game. To me, it's one of the more intriguing bowl games of the entire bowl season. Looking at this, I've not played it yet. I very well might join you here at some point. And not to confuse our viewers, because your recommendation is certainly Georgia Tech plus the points.
Right.
But based on Georgia Tech's propensity for winning games outright as the betting underdog, somebody might consider sprinkling a little bit on Georgia Tech. I saw plus 155 this morning on the money line there at Bet Rivers. But this is going to be an interesting game. Going to be interesting to see what BYU brings to the table. But I do agree, Georgia Tech's got to be a little bit more motivated in this spot.
All right, let's move on to the Texas poll, and one that you have identified, Paul. And I tell you what, the level of excitement completely different on these the sides of this field in this contest. It's one that you've identified, and we do these conference previews, and we look at win losses and maybe a shot to win the conference title, and the win loss totals in back to back years. I took Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars. They were picked to finish last his first year in 2024 in the Big 12, and they went 4-8. But he covered that over and passed it over pretty easily. I think it was 2.5 or 3 that year. This year, 6.5. Man, they got to win 7 games. Well, took them again. They went 9-3. Willie Fritz took a 2-10 team at Tulane and turned them into a 12-2 team. John Summerall parlayed the sustainability at Tulane into the Florida job, but he didn't start it over in Tulane. So Willie Fritz did, and boy, he won a lot of games at Georgia Southern even before he went to Tulane, and now he's doing it at Houston. And now, when you've got a little positive momentum, maybe a little bit more of private donorship from their alumni and booster group as well. LSU, how excited are they be in the Texas Bowl? I've done a talk show in Baton Rouge for 36 years, and I couldn't even tell you what bowl they were in before they got into this thing. So, I mean, they fired the coach. Frank Wilson's going to figure it out. He's already taken a job at Ole Miss. It's funny. LSU's staff is doing work right now at Oxford, and Ole Miss's staff is doing some work in Baton Rouge. So, screwed up to say the least. Yeah, I would say LSU 3-41.5, no doubt. Paul, I know who you like here, and trust me, I will be on your side in this one. I will be back in the Houston Cougars and Willie Fritz. So much more excited to participate in this bowl.
First of all, Jimmy, I'll vouch for you. Those who can't remember, I can't imagine people not remembering everything that we say throughout the course of a football season, Jimmy. But you have long touted the coaching ability of Willie Fritz and his ability to get the most out of his players. I don't know, what the proceeds would be had you played Willie Fritz, say, since he took over there at Tulane and just played him blindly every game. But man, his players, they exceed expectations, his teams year after year. So I think it would be quite profitable. You look at this bowl game between Houston and LSU, and this is just something to think about. But if this game would have been played on a neutral site in mid-September, when LSU reached as high as number 3 in the polls, it's hard to remember that, but LSU got as high as number 3 this season in the AP poll. But if in that scenario, mid-September, LSU number 3, they would have been favored by double digits here. They would have been favored on a neutral probably by 2 touchdowns. But here we are. A lot has happened between then and now. This game to be played this coming Saturday, December 27th, there in Houston, the Texas Bowl. And it's just, looks like everything favors Houston. I will say the one thing, even with all the opt-outs and the players declaring for the NFL draft and so forth, the missing players that LSU will have, LSU is still more talented than Houston. But I just think there's such a gulf between the team's motivation for this game. I mean, you look again at the changes for LSU. Most notably, they lose their head coach, Brian Kelly, fired in late October. They started out, fairly good. Then the curtains kind of peeled back on the Tigers. They lose four times during a 5-game stretch during the season's midsection, and Kelly is gone. So now you have an LSU team whose goal was clearly to make the 12-team playoff and challenge for a national championship, and they're playing the University of Houston in a mid-level bowl 2 days after Christmas. And it's a bowl that they've played. I think this is the second straight year, maybe the third time in 4 years that LSU's been in the Texas Bowl. So some of these players have made most or at least some of those trips. They're probably tired of Houston, and they certainly didn't envision playing the University of Houston in this bowl game as they were working out during the summer. Then to exacerbate LSU's situation, again, getting back to the coaching change. They're in the middle of a coaching change. Almost certainly, additionally, will be without a number of key performers in this game. And it's a game, again, they probably have little interest in playing. Their quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, hurt around midseason. He obviously won't play. I think their defensive, kind of their spiritual leader, linebacker Whit Weeks, he was injured around midseason as well. Later in the season, he's been out down the stretch. He won't play as well. And then some of the other key LSU players who reportedly are either considering or more than likely unlikely to play. You're talking about linebacker Harold Perkins, cornerback Mansour Delane.
Delane is definitely out. Yeah,
you're right. Safety AJ Halsey,
out.
Defensive end Jack Pyburn, wide receiver Aaron Anderson. I think he declared a day or two back from the NFL draft. I don't think he's going to play. And there'll certainly be more, I think, on the LSU side of the ledger. And then again, on the other side of the ledger, you got a University of Houston team playing in their hometown against one of the sport's more storied programs. So this game means everything to the University of Houston. I think very little to LSU. They would rather be elsewhere. And kind of to sum it up and close my comments, Willie Fritz's quote about this game, this was just incredible. But he recently said the Texas Bowl was possibly, quote, the most impactful bowl game, end quote, that he's ever been a part of. So he sees this as a program defining victory, something that can maybe create momentum for next year, something that can kind of put the Cougars on the map, so forth and so on. It just means more. And in this case, it means more to the University of Houston. I'll take the Cougars -3 over LSU.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But roughly half of the scholarship players will be out for LSU in this game. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, and that's from a coach at Tulane that Willie Fritz coached the Cotton Bowl against the Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams and won a wild game in Dallas in that Cotton Bowl over USC. Let's move to our last one. Our last one is a double barrel pick, a Music City Bowl. Tennessee staying in state, short trip to Middle Tennessee to take in Nashville to take on the Fighting Illini of Illinois. And both of these teams had higher expectations for the season. Tennessee, after they made an appearance in their first college football playoff. Now they had that weird quarterback situation where their quarterback was asking for more money. They said nope. They cut him loose, and it basically made a switch with UCLA at the quarterback position. And in Illinois, so many returning pieces for Brett Bielema and Champaign, and they got that nice road win early in the season against Durham. But man, they just never recovered fully from that whooping they took on prime time in that top 10 matchup in Bloomington against the Indiana Hoosiers. It was just more than just an L in that game. But the thing is here at Illinois still had so many guys returned, so many 3-year starters this year. Bielema, and I still think that they got a lot of guys that on this roster care about being in this game a little bit more than the homestanding Volunteers. Again, this is a spot where the better number is gone. It's not available right now, but we're not going to say I got a position that with 4 or 5 points. I'm going to give you what's available right now, and still what's available right now. Although it's not as good as the original line, I love Illinois in this spot plus the 2.5. I think it's a little bit more experienced leadership on this one that cares about this outcome against an SEC program. So give me the Illini, Brett Bielema's his crew, plus a 2.5 in Nashville.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Jimmy, but this SEC Big Ten bowl game taking place in the University of Tennessee's backyard, so to speak. They're in Nashville, roughly 200 miles west of Knoxville, so not a very far drive from the Tennessee campus. But I'm like you. I just view this game as having more meaning to Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini. One season, you look at Tennessee, one season after gaining a spot in the inaugural 12-team college football playoff. Tennessee's season this year might not have been a bitter disappointment, so to speak, but it certainly fell short of expectations. And you kind of look at the 12 regular season games played by the Volunteers. They were 0-4 against ranked opponents this year, despite playing three of those teams in the friendly confines of Neyland Stadium. And then in SEC play, they broke even, went 4-4, but you look at their league wins: Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Florida. Those four teams that they beat in SEC play combined to go 5-27 in SEC play. So they didn't really beat any of the conference's upper echelon, so to speak. And then you look at their four non-conference wins, had a relatively easy, to put it mildly, non-conference schedule. Their four non-conference victims: Syracuse, East Tennessee State of the FCS level, UAB, and New Mexico State. So the Volunteers have beaten absolutely no one of note this year when you get right down to it. You look at the Fighting Illini again, like Tennessee, they finished with an 8-4 regular season record. Their top victory came over Southern Cal there in Champaign, beat the Trojans 34-32 the final Saturday in September as a 7-point home underdog. Both teams going to have some missing players, but looking at it this morning, I rate those losses right now as pretty much a wash. So I don't think there's an advantage to either side based on the missing pieces. And I'll say this, and these SEC Big Ten bowl matchups, I think it's unquestionable. And this is an opinion and it is subjective, but these games mean more to the Big Ten. Right or wrong, the SEC, everybody's looking up to the SEC. And the Big Ten, especially being kind of the second strongest. This year, they are the best conference at the top of the league. No question about it. The top of the Big Ten, stronger than the top of the SEC. Right. But no question about it, from top to bottom, nobody's close to the SEC, when you consider all teams. But these games mean more to the Big Ten. There's no question about it, in my opinion. The Big Ten last year in bowl games and playoff games, the Big Ten 5-1 versus the SEC. So I think they really like to get the best of the big old SEC in these games. And like you, I think Illinois is going to win this game outright. I like the Fighting Illini plus 2.5 over the Volunteers in Nashville.
Yes, indeed. So again, that wraps up this bowl podcast. Again, we're going to be doing our next podcast will be the quarterfinals for the college football playoffs. So those four matchups, we go from campus sites to neutral sites and some of the traditional sites like the Sugar Bowl and Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl. So that'll be fun. And then we continue with our bowl games. They got 5 bowl games on January 2nd this year. So an unorthodox schedule, but certainly an unorthodox period as far as trying to see who's maintaining their roster as much. We'll try and provide as much of that information for you to help shape your handicap. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by our friends at Bet Rivers.